You are a coach or trainee that thinks that neutral spine is a must in training. Today's video might challenge your view. My name is Annie Miller, Certified Strength and Conditioning Specialist, and I help you learn as you train and enjoy your lifts again. I have to start this video by saying that this is my own experience and my current perspective, plus years in the field of strength training as a coach. That's where I'm coming from. If you've ever seen a butt wink or a scaredy cat deadlift, you've seen spinal flexion under load. Now, before you put on your movement elitist pants, hear me out, because those movement elitist pants are exactly how I got into my situation of neutral spine doing me wrong. Anytime I have shared my disc herniation story, people flock to it. That's probably because, depending on your source, 75 to 80% of Americans experience some level of back pain, and typically it's in your low back or your lumbar spine. My personal disc herniation was the infamous L4, L5, and S1 combination. Neutral spine is not what caused my disc herniation, but that's what came after my disc injury. So today I will share my injury backstory for context, as well as the more important piece in my opinion, which is how the recovery process actually led to a lot of learning and undoing in regards to the idea of neutral spine. So here's a video showing my squatting mechanics during the time period when I injured my back. I was only squatting about 155 pounds or so in a circuit with biking and push presses or something like that. It was a quick Metcon style lift, which was common for me in my college days. You know, you have like 40 minutes in between classes to get a lift in, so you check CrossFit.com and do whatever the WOD is for that day. That was literally my life in this season. And to be honest, at 20 years old, it worked really well for me. Now, I know that I said CrossFit and people will automatically make the correlation that CrossFit hurt my back. That would be false. That is not the case, so please just don't go there. Shitty repeated squatting mechanics under load plus a lack of pelvic awareness is what hurt my back, okay? Essentially, I'd felt tension in my low back during this squatting session. This was common for me at that time, and I could tell that it was escalating, but I was 20, so I kept going. And then bam, at the bottom of a squat, it was probably my 8th one or so in my 3rd round. It felt like I legitimately got shot in the low back tailbone, or what I would imagine. I laid on the floor, unable to move for minutes, and then dealt with immobility for a good couple of weeks. And when I say immobility, I am not exaggerating. I was unable to get in and out of my car without pain, lying down hurt, sitting hurt, attempting to either flex or extend my low back hurt. Nothing was comfortable. So what did I end up doing? I worked with Dr. Philip Snell in Portland, Oregon, and I absolutely loved my experience. I found him through my connections at University of Portland. He was on my team. He wanted me to understand the injury, why it happened, and the fact that I could absolutely recover and get back under the barbell. In fact, he was one of the first practitioners that introduced the fact that a lot of people have disc herniations in life, and they are asymptomatic, that you don't need surgery, and that the body can heal itself most of the time. But of course, you need to consult your doctor. Surgery is the right option for some people, but it certainly was not for me. This is where the process begins and where neutral spine did me wrong. I was squatting ass to grass because I was a young strength and conditioning coach, and I saw everything in black and white at that time. I thought that Kelly Starrett was God and that we all needed to squat exactly like him. Toes forward, knees out, ass to grass, as much torque in your glutes as you could possibly create. This injury and my philosophy, I want to be clear, had nothing to do with Kelly. He never preached that everyone needed to squat like him. That was me, to make that clear. I took his message and skewed it all myself, which is why I made this reel on Instagram.
I actually did it myself. Yeah. Nice. Thank you.
The link will be in the description below, and this is where people relate every single time I post about injuring my own back. So Dr. Snell and I determined that I was squatting below my own personal limits, causing my tail to tuck under at the bottom of my squat or enter spinal flexion, but also I was completely unaware of my pelvis and my breathing. So I worked for 12 plus weeks and did the same exact warm up every single day, plus I was squatting underneath the bar 3 days per week. I will say this was the most jacked my legs ever got, and I certainly did not hate that part of this process. Also, here comes the issue with that neutral spine. I created the most rigid spine you can imagine in this process, and that was my biggest mistake in my recovery. I swung the pendulum from no pelvic control to not being able to move my spine or pelvis, from lacking mobility and control to trying to gain mobility, but training rigidly to the max. Now, here is a video of me repping 215 after my rehab process, which was over 30 pounds more than I had ever done previously. I think it's a beautiful squat, and my spine remains neutral on the outside. But years down the road, that rigid spine ended up causing other issues. While we want to be able to attain and maintain a neutral spine, absolutely, because this is the best, or typically the best, for force production and limb control, the spine is supposed to be mobile. Yes, you heard that right. Your spine should be mobile. It should be able to flex and extend and rotate in all three sections. With that, you should be able to segment your vertebrae, moving one at a time. I'm not saying that this is a common ability or that it's easy to attain if you can't do it, but the spine should have these abilities. It was made to have these abilities. Now, should you attempt this under load? Not always, but if progressive, then perhaps, yes, it's totally safe. Contrary to Globo Gym beliefs, pulling a deadlift with a rounded spine does not inherently lead to injury. We simply do not have the data to support that claim that many people have. Now, I want you to calm down if that makes you enrage inside. What we do know is that when load exceeds capacity, no matter the position, no matter the exercise, we often end up with injury or tissue damage. So yes, if you have not trained and progressed load over time in that rounded position, you may get injured due to the excess load in an untrained position in which you lack the capacity to perform. And that does mean that if I trained my end range of a squat where I did have that slight spinal flexion in place, but I remained braced, I would likely be fine and injury-free. That was not my case. Controlled, I was not. Now, don't get me wrong, neutral spine is great, like I said. We want to be able to find and sustain it. That's an important part of training, but also we need spine mobility. And remember that neutral spine is a buffer zone. Some give in either direction, flexion or extension, is not going to automatically equal injury. Don't become a movement elitist like I was. Train the core in different positions, strengthen the low back as well. It should be strong. We should not be afraid of working those muscles, and be open to working on control through your spinal end ranges, just as you would with your hips, your ankles, your shoulders, any other joint in the body. That's not to say disregard all form and that we should completely ignore the most efficient movement pattern for force transfer. That is not what I'm saying. Let's just not get so fixated on always being in a neutral position that we lose all mobility and live in fear of any spinal flexion. That is my point. Take it or leave it. That's what I'm giving you today. Let me know in the comments below, have you experienced a disc herniation? How did it happen? What did you do to recover from it? Hopefully this video was insightful, if anything. Remember that it is just my experience and my perspective, but I do hope you got something from it. I will catch you guys in the next one.